Let me just do that. Okay, hello. You should probably be able to hear me on YouTube now, I would think. Okay. Okay. Well, I think we can go ahead and start here. So basically, this is a part of my effort to, I'm trying to get a curriculum built up on Patreon with like everything, with everything. But this is a topic that's particularly relevant. So, hey, why not start live streaming some of these? And then later on, I can go ahead and take the footage and make tutorials out of it also that are rewatchable later. I'm going to let the stream, I was going to post the entire stream anyway as a recording, but I guess streaming makes sense. So I can just stream it as a stream and then it can be watched later. I think that's pretty logical. I'm just checking all of my stream settings here, making sure the quality is going to be decent. I think it should be fine. You don't really need a high bit rate if you're going to stream art for the most part. There's not a whole lot going on. Okay, so when it comes to drawing folds here, we're going to want to start with a basic form progression to begin with. For some of you, this may be review. For some of you, this may be new. And hold up, I'm going to pull up the Discord chat again so I can see both. Oh, no stream on Discord? You know what? Yeah, let me stream on Discord 2 screens. There we go. Okay. I should now be streaming everywhere. Hopefully my internet can handle that. Yes, and I'm trying to pay attention to chat. I definitely will not be able to catch every message though. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll begin, and I'm just gonna start going through a kind of basic form progression here. So, in the beginning, God created heavens and the earth, but that's beyond the scope of the lesson today, I suppose. So, we usually start when we're drawing with something like shapes. So you could think of a couple of basic shapes here: the box, the circle. And as well as triangles would usually be a pretty basic sort of shape, and those are basically. I'll probably look at some submissions a little bit later, just reading chat. But for now, I'm going to start with just a kind of tutorial type thing, a little bit of a workshop, and then we'll maybe look at some submissions later. In fact, I do want to try and look at some later. So, okay, so we have these basic shapes, and these are all good and fine. And a good way to warm up here, this will be warm up for some people. Maybe some people aren't too familiar with drawing these, but the next step from here is we want to take these and make them 3D. So the box, the circle, and the triangle can all be approached with the same method, and this is the method that we'll be using for clothing as well, which is we'll get to the submitting stuff later. I'll make sure that you guys know where to send art. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take these shapes and extend them, and this is the way that I like to think about 3D drawing. So we take a shape and we extend it back, in this case using parallel lines. If you're going to use perspective, you can do so, but we don't really need to. We can just use parallel lines and then connect these lines with edges parallel to the edges of the original shape. So in this case, we end up with something approximating a 3D form. We can do this with any form. We could do this with the triangle to get a sort of wedge, or we could do this with the circle to get a cylinder. Of course, with a circle also, you can make a circle three-dimensional by adding either shading or contouring as well. And this will also create the impression of three-dimensionality. You could do this with a triangle, I suppose, to some extent. You'd have to round the bottom and you could get a cone. That'd be kind of fun. But the main idea here is really to do with extending into 3D form. And this can be used for anything, by the way. Sometimes, every once in a while, I'll be drawing cars with students. Let's say that I draw a sort of cartoon truck here. And I didn't even lift this truck, so boo. But okay, we end up with some sort of truck. And it's pretty common to end up in a scenario like this and then get a question like, how do you draw it in 3D? And the answer is, simpler than you would think. You just take the shape and you extend it out like this. And then you end up with a car that exists in 3D. So this works for pretty much anything, which is good news for us because it makes life pretty simple. So we can do something like this, and now, we're good to go. So the first thing that we want to do here is kind of just get warmed up, or this is what I like to do, is just get warmed up, doing a series of these basic forms, draw some boxes, draw some cylinders. I like to leave extra. This is important when you're drawing geometric forms like this, is you want to leave extra space. If you try and, let's say that I was to try and meet this line here, this corner to this corner, you'll notice how I've actually skewed my line out to the right in trying to do so. We don't want to do that. We want to leave lots of extra line. Draw that line, be, you know, very objective, very gestural. And we'll end up with something more accurate. So I'm going to start with a couple of these shapes just to warm up and get a feel for what it's like to extend forms. And most of you are probably familiar drawing 3D boxes. They're pretty intuitive to create. Even if you've never drawn one before, you can usually figure out how. You draw some sort of a little Y. You can create a box up here, etc., etc. Some people like to draw 2 boxes offset. That also works. This isn't my favorite for construction purposes, but you can create a 3D box doing this, and that is in fact how the geometry works, so that's also fine. Someone dumb it down. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm going to try and move not too fast, but also not too slow. It's a fine balance. I'll go ahead and you know, try and slow things down every once in a while. But the first thing to do here is go ahead and warm up with some of these boxes. And like I say, some of this will be available for review later as well. Is we want to try and warm up with some of these boxes. And where we are trying to go with this is, and you can go ahead and continue to draw those as I talk about this next step. But the first part of that, so we talk about drawing a shape and then extending it into a box. But when we draw a rectangle specifically, there's this interesting thing that we do where the rectangle itself is kind of just a line that's been extended outwards and then capped to form a rectangle. So even the rectangle itself is an extended line. And this is pretty useful because when we're going to draw clothes, you know, the problem of how to draw clothes is kind of interesting. So I like cylinders as much as the next person. So we could think about, okay, an arm is sort of like a cylinder and it exists something like this. And so you ask yourself, how am I going to put clothes on this? And a pretty simple solution to that, and a pretty effective one, would be something like, let's put another cylinder on this arm like this. Okay, so now we have this sort of hollow cylinder wrapping around our arm. And this is a great place to start if even doing this seems a little bit new or like something that you haven't done before, this is the true real starting place when it comes to drawing clothes, because this would be the fundamental idea here, right? Is we're placing a hollow cylinder around the cylinder of your arm. You can do this with all sorts of different pieces of clothing. Let's say that you have a sort of torso here. I'll make it kind of jacked, because why not? And, you know, if you're going to draw a sort of coat, a coat is a cylinder that's just split down the middle, something like that, or more of a kind of cone, something like so. And we just open that up. And so this is a really good place to start. And in fact, that, you know, we'll just make that our next form progression here before we continue to expand on that. So once you've drawn a few of those boxes, we can go ahead here and draw some cylinders. And a good thing to do here is just practice even just kind of opening these cylinders up. This is the simplest form of drawing clothing here. And this is a good way to begin to visualize what we're going to be doing. So you draw a cylinder, divide it up like so, erase this gap, and then what we want to find is the full ellipse here at the back. So I go ahead and just trace all the way around, and there we have that full ellipse, and we get rid of this. And now we have this sort of tube that's open in the middle. And that's a great place to start, because it's this right here. It's this section of cylinder overlapping this one back here that can be quite difficult to learn or process, you know, as we start to get into this. So yes, exactly like a cloak. So let's see. That would be a great place to start, is to play around with some of those. And these can be perfectly functional. You draw this sort of C shape like that, and we're already starting to get to the sort of forms that we'll be drawing later. But splitting a cylinder is a really easy way to do this. So you take this, and it feels very intuitive. There's not a lot of thinking that you have to put into this. You divide up one face of the cylinder, and you erase everything that you don't need afterwards. And then for the sake of clarity, you could go ahead in here and you could shade. So I hadn't actually planned on this specific shape, but now that I draw it out, now that I'm here explaining this, there we go. Learning how to draw coats. I mean, you could apply this to many different types of clothing. This isn't really specific to any one type of clothing. The ideas that we'll go over will apply to many. Yeah, skirts are a great one. Capes are fantastic. We're going to definitely use capes as an example because capes are very flowy and billowy and cool. And then we'll probably use some sleeves later if we get to compression folds. But we're going to start with these sort of drapery folds, which especially recommend to, which especially apply to things like capes, like skirts. So okay, and yeah, that's actually a good point. Is you can go to the yes, we are going to work from reference later. You can move to the YouTube stream if I'm going too fast, and then you could pause and just kind of work at your own pace, and then maybe just keep the Discord stream open somewhere else, or I don't know, and then you keep track of when I start looking at art if you wanted to skip ahead at that point. But okay, or maybe I'll ping when I start reviewing. Maybe I'll ping, and that way you guys can go to YouTube and you don't have to worry about staying up to date. So I'll send a ping on Discord about when you might want to skip ahead if I'm gonna review some art. So okay, this is a really great place to start right here, is with taking those cylinders, opening them up, and then showing the two different layers of the cylinder. So kind of getting back to this little area down here, I was talking about the fact that we extend rectangles, we extend lines to get rectangles. And this sort of begs the question, right? So you could draw a cape like this. So we could say, here's a guy's head. He's giving you a sort of smirk. And he's wearing a cape. So we could draw that cape like this. And there's nothing unrealistic about this at all. This is totally acceptable. This is a cape, but it's a little bit plain. And so there's this sort of question, you know, if we can draw all sorts of different shapes and extend them into 3D forms, why not draw a different line and extend that into, I say a shape, but really it would be a flat shape that is actually a 3D form though. So the idea here is really we want to find these edges. I think this is still the correct starting point. But let's imagine that there is excess fabric, and so this is no longer simply a flat surface. Let's say that we do this, and this is a really good place to start. Not even with this so much in particular. Let's just draw an S. So instead of starting with a straight line, let's draw an S. Now, the main important thing here is we want these two edges to fall behind each other. So if I draw a form like this, this is a pretty fun form, and you can actually create these same sorts of folds. They're just not going to work as easily for a cape, because at this point, if I try and extend these lines forward, this will be the extent of the form. And so again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't have the sense of three-dimensionality that we're going for. We'd have to change the angle, which we can do later. But for now, the easiest place to start is go left and right, draw a dramatized Z or S fold. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so there's a sort of Z or S fold here, and this is going to be the easiest place to start, because then if we extend vertically like this, that will apply directly to a cape or a skirt. So what we can do here is we can take this and we can find all outer edges. So all edges that are on the outer side of the form or nearer to us. And again, I say that it can be a little bit hard to build a sense for this. So this is one of those forms that some people catch onto it really quickly. Some people need to like really sit down and work through this slowly and have it explained to them. And so that's totally fine also. Voice kind of robotic, as long as that's not a connection issue, I'm not too worried about it. If you just mean that it's just the way I'm speaking. But let me know if there's some sort of connection issue. So from here, I'm just going to take these lines, I'll bring them up, and then similar to the other form, we can actually mimic this same line over here in order to find the other side of the form. You can approximate this as well, so we could do this and then just approximate these lines, but this is what we are imagining when we do that approximation. So we could bring those lines through like so, and then we're going to want to find these edges back here and connect. Then of course anything which would fall out of our view would be erased, and we'll end up with a sort of ribbon like this. And these ribbons are super important. And again, they look super simple and easy to understand, especially when you see them drawn out like that, but they can be pretty tricky. So I really recommend practicing these and see if you can get a really good feel for how to draw them. I'm going to draw a series of them here because what you want to start with is something like this. Here's another way to visualize it that might make sense. So another thing we can do here is we can draw a series of cards. So here's a card. Here's another card. Notice how all of these lines are parallel. The only ones that move are this axis right here. So we shift that axis down and we place this card behind this one. Let's shift it the other way and place this card behind this one. So this is another way of visualizing it that's sometimes a little bit easier to understand. So I'll draw this out this way. Then what we would get from here is just a rounded out version of this is what we're working with when we draw those folds. Right, so that's another way to visualize it. Okay, so this is where I would start. We can start by just mastering that simple S, make sure that makes sense. And then from here, we can take that and we can do something more like this. So you want to get to the point where you can draw all sorts of, you don't really want to do a loop-de-doo. That doesn't really make any sense. So I'll go ahead and fix that real quick. You want to be able to draw basically just any old set of squiggly lines and accurately find all of the edges. And that's really what it's about, is being able to see in your mind's eye which edges constitute what sort of line, are going to require what sort of line, and where you're going to have to replace that, where you're going to have to place that line, and also just where there are no edges. So the trickiest areas of the form are going to be these areas right here. So what you'll notice is this particular curve almost travels at the same angle as our edges. And in this case, it's tough to know whether you're going to get an edge or not. And in fact, if this did point in the exact same direction, we probably wouldn't. Now, it doesn't quite, so I think I will get a very small edge, but some of these edges will become very slim here. And you need to make sure the most difficult thing here, or the most common mistake, is placing lines where they don't belong. So you look at a cape like this, the most common mistake would be to just place lines where you don't actually get a fold. So lines only occur where an overlap occurs. They only occur in an area where something is obstructing something else, or where the edge of the form is seen. So in this case here, we'll end up with something like this. I may have missed an edge or two. Only time will tell. I'm going to go ahead here and just begin to mimic this line. I'll imagine myself drawing through here like so. Work my way all the way around. Some of these surfaces will become a little bit slimmer depending on the perspective. Oh, this one here is kind of weird. Okay, that goes around like that, I think. That goes around and forwards. So being able to work up to this level where we can create, just kind of any old windy sort of line and then turn it into a form is a really good place to start. And this is where I would begin practicing, is just with really nailing these S curves. So I'm probably just going to go ahead and sit here for, let's see, maybe just 3 or 4 minutes. I'll just watch the clock for 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll just draw some more of these S forms. And that way, if any of you are following along, you have a moment to do so, because this is really where you want to start. This is super important. Everything else becomes so much easier if we have a good feel for how to draw these forms. So again, even just really mastering the simplest S, just that back, forth, will be really important, because we can take this exact form here, and if we have a cape, just like over here, we can just take whatever bottom edge that we would draw and just replace it with that back, forth, and then it has a bit of a fold to it. And so this is one of the easiest places to start with improving the realism of your clothing. And I'm seeing some comments about different types of, what do you want to say, different types of fabrics. One of the main differences that you'll get is actually in these folds here when it comes to how it rests. So like a stiffer fabric would be actually closer to that more angular form that I drew in that example below. So if it was a thicker, stiffer fabric, it would be a little bit, you'd see some kind of more triangular shapes. And there would be fewer folds also, whereas if you have something very silky, you'll get many folds, and they'll be smaller, and they'll be a little bit softer and rounder. So yeah, I don't know to what extent we'll get into like painting different fabrics today, but that would be an interesting subject. Yeah, you can't do art class in a hot tub. Okay. So let's see, still have a couple of minutes here. Am I streaming art submissions? Yes, okay. I'll go ahead and scroll through chat for a little bit. Trying to watch the stream. Yeah, you got to use multiple devices or a separate monitor. That's going to be the move. It's going to be a little bit tricky though. Oh, that is a nice wizard. I might actually... Did you just draw that wizard just now? Thought of a cape? Here's a... Did you draw that just now? Or is that... Yep, just now? Okay, I might put that in here. We'll count that as an early submission maybe. I'll put that just right over there because this is a nice little fold right here, and then who knows, maybe, you know, I'll just keep that. Let's keep that in my back pocket. That's nice. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, that's repeatedly said type of stuff later. Accommodate other countries. Oh, I see what you're saying. 6 hours ahead. It's very early for you, so that means presumably you want me to open submissions like 8 a.m. my time is what that means. Sometimes I'm awake at 8 a.m., but I'm not clearing submissions at 8 a.m. You know, we'll see. I can try. I can certainly think about that because I know that I do have people who are far east. Examples of folds in the past. Yeah, these are some great folds. I like all these folds. These are cool, and these are very detailed. You're one of those clothing people. Look at all the detail being put into those clothes. Here, I'll pull it up on stream. Look at all the detail in this particular individual's style here. That's a ton of fold. So, okay, excellent work. Okay, here we have, this is a great example, and I like that you guys are sending these live because it's really useful to be able to pull up these examples and look at them in real time. Because whatever issues you think you're having or whatever you might be struggling with, you know, just know that like other people are also struggling with those exact same things. So it's great to have them pulled up. Now, I'm going to try my best to kind of follow what's going on here. But, okay, so yeah, I'm going to find the most correct portion of the fold and then try and continue it on downwards, and we'll see if we can spot where things went awry. Now, this might not even be a totally unrealistic fold, but we're trying to first start by mastering something very regular like this. That'll be the easiest way to go. You could probably get something like this, in theory, I think, if the ribbon twisted, although you might end up with some different angles in different places, and that's why I recommend starting with just the easiest, simplest form first. We're sending these in the Discord in the stream chat. So if you go to the voice chat, you can look in the voice chat, and there's actually a text channel associated with the voice chat. Okay, so basically what's happening here is, so I think this top section here is very much correct, and then what's going to happen here is this line here is going to move down like this, and this is the near edge, and in this current arrangement, the near edge is always going to be the near edge if we're drawing a regular S form likened to that one there. So what's going to happen here is this is going to come down, 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 around like so. And you can totally get folds that, ribbons that twist. That's just fine. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this as my starting line. And again, I'm not sure which line you might have started with. I didn't see the process of how you got here. But I like to start with one continuous line, and this will make things a little bit easier. So from here, we have these sorts of edges like this, and that's all accurate. I'm just going to continue this trend all the way down. So down here, oh, I'll go all the way down here, and then I'll let it come to a point again all the way over here. And then from this point, we can work our way through and draw the other side. And so what's going to happen here is we're going to start at the back corner of each edge, and work our way to the back corner of the other edge, although we won't actually draw that line through. You can if you want to, and then erase. So back corner to back corner, we'd go through like this. Like that, come through and around, through and around, so on and so forth. So I suspect, I'm not sure, I'll keep an eye on chat, but I'm sorry if I miss your answer to this question. It may have been that you drew this kind of one section at a time, and that might have been what caused that, or maybe you were going for a bit of a twist. Twists can be fun. So you could start with something like this, and you could go around, and then, yeah, maybe this could like switch sides, you know, so we could get a switch in the ribbon, go around this way. It's possible, but it looks a little bit like it was drawn one section at a time, but hard to say. Anyway, thanks for sending that one in, because I guarantee there were definitely other people who were having some trouble with that. Here is Rain's attempt. Sick. Working with Procreate. Awesome. Okay, so this is, let me just keep track of this. Yes, this is very good. This is very good. This is a little bit, there's a little bit of inconsistency with the perspective here. That's not necessarily an issue, by the way. I just want to say that. So these lines that we're extending back, in the same way that you can take a box and you can extend the lines back either in parallel or to a converging point to get a vanishing point, you could extend these lines in different ways. Again, all the feedback that I'm giving here, I'm giving in the context of drawing something regular. So if we're drawing something in a very regular, clean, boring sort of study manner here, what we're going to want to look for is, again, this very clean top section right here. I like this. All of these lines seem to move at roughly the same angle, and we want to keep that. This line here, this curve occurring too early, is pretty common. This line should trace back. You can see it traces back to over here. It should trace back to this section right here, so we can come through there like that. And then what happens here is this edge over here, this line moves in instead of moving back. And again, if we had a vanishing point, that could be accurate, so that's not even necessarily always going to be an issue. Assuming you were trying to copy what I was doing though was keeping them all parallel. So from this edge right here, we would do one of those to match this side over here. And then again, that curve occurs a little bit too early, so we're going to get more of a triangular shape on the inside rather than a curved shape. Then we'll go around and through. This edge here looks good, and the rest of the edges also look good. I think it was just that one little section there where the angle didn't quite line up. But overall, that was a very clean representation of a ribbon. So awesome. Oh, I'm seeing lots of good clothing drawings here. Okay, True Mad Hatter. A little bit of trouble translating from ribbon to cape. So this is the next step, is we need to take the ribbons. Ooh, and this is pretty good. I see somebody A ... who drew some traditionally, and those are looking good. Okay, awesome. So here, this is probably the last one that I'll look at before I draw some more examples. Although this is what we'll be doing next here, is kind of translating this to a cape. So these all look super clean. I mean, this is spot on. These all look great. Moving this over to a cape, this also looks great. So I'm not exactly sure what the trouble is necessarily. There might be one line missing here. So one thing that I want to set out as a rule of thumb is, if you get a line, not accounting for these outside lines, looking at lines on the inside, if you get a line going up on the inside, there's probably a corresponding line behind like this. And that would make sense, right? Because if we draw a plane and then draw a line up through our cape, that's a part of a shape which is going to have another side to it, right? So we're going to want a corresponding line, just as this line corresponds to this one. We're going to want this line back here to correspond to this one. It would form a very slim shape though, so it's very easy to miss. But if we're going to get that line, we'd probably get a line of some kind. But no, I think that's a really good job there, converting the one to the other. I think that looks just fine. So okay, awesome. Do watch circumstances like this. We do want these lines technically to meet the very edge. That's sort of a nitpick, but it's worth considering for when you go to create cleaner pieces. Although it was likely just a product of, rushing to keep up. So, okay, awesome. And then I said that was going to be the last one, but you guys just keep tempting me here. Come on. Okay, there's this one here. And so yeah, this is cool. And this is a good example of a twist right there. If you want to see a twist, this sort of twist around. And then this here, we could probably take this line and just pull that in a little bit like that. But yeah, very, very cool example of a twist on this ribbon there. Sick. Okay, well, now we will move on to doing some more capes here. We'll start with a simple cape, and we'll just do one or two, because once you have the S, the cape is pretty simple. The cape is actually a simpler version of the S, because you're only doing half of it. So easiest version is something like this. We just take this, and we move it up, and there you have a fold in your cape. To get a little bit more complicated, let's start with the top here, and what you can do is you can work your way up to a more complicated sort of line. You can loop that all over the place if you want to. Again, avoid those little things. Sometimes I do that just out of habit, whatever. Find some sort of line here, any sort of crazy line you want. And then the trick here is going to be, again, you want to avoid placing lines where they don't belong. So lines only go in places where there's overlap. So these edges here are going to create overlaps. So we'll get lots of lines through here. And I'll start with all the top edges first. You're liable to miss an edge or two on your first pass through. Doing my best here to spot everything though. Okay, and then we'll do the inside edges that are going to go up and behind. So all of these in here. And that might be it. That might be it. Sometimes I miss one though. I don't know. I don't see any. Oh, I do see one. There we go. Okay. Now if there's one more that I'm missing, I'm truly missing it. Yeah, I'm going to leave this stream up, so, you know, you'll be able to pan back through it. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Fiery Dusk. That looks pretty cool. That's an entire illustration. Got the fur-lined folds even. Yeah, looks like you're spotting your forms pretty well. Careful of these doodads. Here, let me spin this around. Spin move. That's a cool move. Okay, careful of these ones out here. So if you imagine this comes out like this, it's going to do the same thing back here. And over here as well, like in this little area. So, you know, still a work in progress, of course, but useful for people on the stream as well to see. So, very cool. Let's see. Okay, look at this guy. This guy is jacked. And he has a cape. Let's go. So in this case, we have these sort of up and down folds, and you can totally do up and down folds. They look sweet, especially for superheroes. If we want to create overlapping folds for capes that ripple up and down, sort of superhero style, the way that we would want to do that is we would want to take this angle, and the angle has to move perpendicular to the angle of the fold. So if you imagine if the wave, right? So the folds create a wave, up and down, then the lines have to move at a different angle. So we could do something like this. So we could go ahead here, create this little thing here. But then what we might end up with is, let's start from the other side, and we might want to allow our lines to move this way horizontally instead, something like that. Let's see, this would go, so it would come out down here like this. Like so, if we wanted to go for folds in that direction. Nothing necessarily wrong with this cape. Again, it's all a matter of kind of what you're going for. But assuming that we're trying to nail this idea of the more the more, what do you want to say, like explicit folds, that's how we would get that effect right there. Or if you wanted to do something at a bit of an angle, we could also come out like this, get those folds, and you could rotate it more subtly, like so. Either way you wanted to do it. I just want to make that point there about the lines have to move in a different direction than the wave itself. Okay. But yeah, it looks great, and clearly a lot of study into the anatomy there, so that's dope. Okay, let's see. Keep working on the folds. I'm seeing, okay, rain, that's perfect. Looks awesome. Josh jumping straight ahead to the compression folds, looking pretty good. Okay, awesome. Ribbon curl. Okay, you know what? Hey guys, maybe you should practice some ribbon curls. Those are pretty fun. They can take a little bit of focus though, but those are pretty cool. I'll do that real quick, and then that'll give you guys some more time to practice capes if you want to. And then from there, we can go ahead and we can move on to something like actually drawing from a reference, actually doing a study. So this, what you want with the ribbon curls is you want vertical lines on the edges. So imagine this, we start here, we wrap around. And so what's going to happen here is we're going to execute this same thing just over and over again. So we go around like this. There's our edge. We go around again. Go around and around and around. Actually, though, we would want to switch sides if it's a proper curl, right? So we'd want to come around like this if it's a coil. You do this S. It's actually going to alternate. So then we go there. Going to switch sides again. So on and so forth, all the way down. So we need to make sure that we have these edges here as it's alternating, and that's going to really sell the effect. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the contribution, Bumney. Very sick. S ... did something a week ago. That is some very nice clothing. Awesome. Nice skirt there from A ... I wish it showed your guys' whole name. I don't know if that's just what you've named yourselves or if Discord is doing you wrong. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and I'm just going to pull up a reference here, one of my favorite references, and we'll just take a moment to do a quick study. How long have we been going? Okay, that's about perfect. About 50 minutes. That should be just fine, and then we can hopefully dedicate some time to another type of fold a little bit later. So let's do the, I don't know. There are several really neat versions of this same reference. This is the cooler one though, decidedly. Decidedly this is the cooler one. So this is kind of a cool reference here. Here, I'll grab it in a higher resolution though. Just from Pinterest. And it's cool. It's kind of divided in half. It's got these two big billowing curls here. And so if you're ever working from reference and you're going to go ahead and... Okay, yes, Damien, that looks spot on. Right on. Okay, so here we have this. Now, probably the best place to start here would be something like a quick gesture of our pose. Would be a good starting point. It's where I usually go with this reference. I've used this reference many times. There isn't too much going on with the pose, and I've never actually been quite sure what the pose is, because at the end of the day, she's wearing a sort of dress, and so it kind of obscures her anatomy. So I think probably, I mean, my guess has always been that this leg goes down and this leg is bent. It's always been my assumption here. So I think we have something like this. And I've also not been quite sure what the other arm does. That's also not totally clear. I used to draw it bent, but I think it probably does what the first arm does. That's been my more recent conclusion. Okay, so we can find a sort of gesture here. And at this point, we can start to lay in the cape. My favorite way to manage my process here as I'm sketching is I like to use a low opacity eraser, and that's just so useful because what you can do here is you can create your sketch, just brush over this like so, and you're ready to go for your next pass. So at this point, I'll go ahead and I'm going to find typically the origin point of the cape. So there are a couple in this circumstance. You have this sort of shape here around the neck with this brooch right here in the middle. At least, actually, that might be a clasp and not a brooch. Anywho, then you have these shapes resting here on the shoulders. These are kind of fun. The hood, I would assume, sitting over there. And then there are a couple layers to this cape. So from this clasp, we have a couple of lines that go down and out around the arms. And then we have a sort of outer layer for the outside of the cape. Things get a little bit weird on the left side because this actually forms its own sort of shape that is then on either side of this other shape. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create this form here, and then I'm going to come out from behind that with the actual outside of the cape. I'll create, we can use some of those folds from before for this dress down here, so we can see that coming down from this knee. We have a form right here, and then we have some folds back here and over here. We're drawing these from a different angle. I actually didn't go over drawing them from this angle, but it's the opposite. So you imagine if we draw this ribbon here, instead of going up, we go up from the outside first, and it creates an edge like that. Don't worry too much about this if that's confusing. We're mostly focusing on the other angle, but I'll mention that in case that is something that you want to try and incorporate. I'll get either edge here of the cape drawn out, and then we're going to get two sections here of the cape. So there's the one on the left, the one on the right, and then it goes through behind her legs. Now, I actually don't know what happens over here. This has been another point of debate. I don't really have a good way of, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the relationship is between these two edges. I don't know. If anybody has any really great theories about that, please let me know, because my brain just cannot make sense of it, but we should be able to improvise. So this is a good one to start with, though. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move behind the skirt. And what we want to do is trace as best as possible this line that exists here on the reference. So we're going to come behind the skirt, forward, up, around, back, down, and through, like that. So this is the line that we want to find. So over, forwards, out, back around, up, down, and through, something like that. I actually don't really mind if you create something that's disproportionate to the reference. I think that right now understanding of form is going to trump design. And once we have this fold, we can create those two layers. So like I say, this little piece of fabric exists between these two right here. So do something like that. Yeah, Fiery Dusk, that is looking awesome. So, okay, excellent. We're going to get these lines going up this way. And you will notice that drawing folds from references, they're going to be a little bit less regular. So it's not going to be like all the lines are parallel to one another going in exactly the same direction. They're kind of pushed and pulled around by the elements and by whatever they're resting on. But the regular folds are a good place to start, because then when we go to draw these, they're much easier. For this side over here, I'm just going to simplify. I'm going to go out, over in front, around, and then just create a series of folds here that make sense, right? So I'll try and avoid anything too even though. So maybe instead of that, I'll do something like this just to break those up. Create a nice sort of rhythm that is organized but isn't boring and repetitive. End up with something like this, and this is going to go back behind her waist. Okay, something like this. And we'll have a reasonable cape. Okay, cape looks too flat. Josh Hutcherson. I saw your comment about your name earlier. That's funny. This is exactly right. We're just missing the connecting lines here. So I'll go ahead and uncover the reference here in a moment. Sorry guys, if you guys are working from that. Okay, so basically, here's our origin point somewhere up here. Let's just take that and let's just connect these lines to our edges, right? Oh, make sure that's not covered for the stream. So up and up like that. And that completes the form. I'll put that in the Discord chat. Well, I dare say that is an excellent painting, Wooly. You will have to host the next workshop. Let's see. Let me go ahead and grab this one. Oh, whoops. There we go. Okay. Oh, one sec. One sec. Oh, wait. There we go. Okay. So this here, I'm just tracing all the forms here. This looks good. I maybe some of these, I have a hard time following these forms. I'm not saying they're wrong. I think maybe something like this. Let me just picture this in my mind for a moment. Maybe this could go back around this way. It doesn't seem as natural, but it might be possible that it could then go up and then back, up and back over and down and around and under. I don't know if that's impossible. I would err just for safety on the side of... Let me think about that. That might be possible. I don't know if I would overuse it, but I think that's part of what makes the folds a little bit hard to read over here. But I think it is to some extent possible. You can get those different lengths there sometimes. Just want to make sure that it reads clearly. Okay, and a little bit of the same thing kind of over here. We lose track of that fold. So when this comes around this way, we want to make sure that we can see this cloth. We can see this triangle right here. So if we're missing that triangle, it might not, the image might not, the drawing might not read as clearly if we're missing that. So we want to take that out and around and then build the rest of that form. But yeah, looking great, and I like all these folds all the way up here. This is another sort of drapery fold, and this is just the right way to do it. Just find that flow of that cloth and keep things nice and simple. Okay, awesome. Trying to use reference for the cape. It looks like also a skirt. Okay, looking good. Still on the ribbons. Yeah, they can be tricky. The ribbons are again, it's if you really understand them, you can make them look easy for sure, but they're not always that intuitive. So again, the process that I would follow here is think about your parallel lines. So start with your S, right? Start with your S. And then off of each edge, draw lines and just focus on the lines all moving the same direction. I'll pick a different direction because those lines were parallel to this one. So I'll just go straight up. That'll be easier. So, okay, they all move the exact same direction. Then on the top of each section, complete the form. And again, it might be helpful for you to practice with cards first. So if you practice here, if you can get this, then it might be that that helps later on. And similar thing over here. So what you had earlier, Mr. Hutchinson, I think was correct. And actually, you're drawing digitally. So what I would recommend, go ahead and take here. I'll put this in chat one more time. Go ahead and actually take this and screenshot it and trace over it. And that might help. Again, ribbons are weird, and you have to develop a bit of a feel for them. And sometimes even just a bit of tracing will make a big difference. Yuka, that looks awesome. Excellent pencil work. So yeah, I'd recommend a bit of a trace, because I think you had this contour looking good the first time right there. I think if you trace that original contour and then trace these lines, it may start to help that make, that may start to make sense. So might be worthwhile there. Tried fixing the cape and somehow made it look worse. Well, let's see. I don't know if that's true. So I noticed the skirt down here. Like, the skirt looks good. Yeah, that sounds good, Josh. So I don't, the cape, I'm having a hard time following the form all the way through, and I don't remember the other one well enough to like make a comparison with the other one. But I could draw, what I might use for this cape for sure, which is, I think we'd get something like this. So I think that we would start here, and I like that you're, trying to draw this from imagination. That can be quite a good way to learn. So we're going to want, remember, one continuous line for the back of the cape. So ultimately, it's going to be one line. Then it looks like the only fold that we have in the cape is this one fold right here, moving up into that clasp right there. Okay, so the question would be, how do we mimic this on the other side? And I think the answer is maybe simpler than you would think. I think it's a gestural problem. I think we just find the same S-curve, like that, right? Aim for symmetry, and then just complete that form. So I don't know that we actually need any more than that. It sort of looks like she's missing a shoulder, but I think that was a little bit of an issue anyway. Oh, we could just bring this line around like that. Yeah, I mean, that seems to make sense. I don't mind that. Seems like a functional cape to me. Something like so. Okay. I'll try it your way too, with it going over the chest. See if that works, but I kind of like the simplified version myself, but I'll try this. Okay. This also seems to be functional if we do that, but I like the simplicity of the other version. I'll leave that up to you, of course, but I kind of like the simplicity of this particular shape. If it were up to me. Indeed. Okay, let's see. Make the jacket look more 3D on the Walking Dead cover. Sweet. Well, that's hard to say. This is getting a little bit off topic, and we also haven't got here yet, but we will get here a little bit later, so this is kind of spoilers. one thing that's easy to do with these sorts of folds like this is, so you have to keep in mind your shading and then your meta shading. So what I mean by that, you have a cylinder, and a cylinder is going to be shaded a certain sort of way, right? So here's your cylindrical shading. And then you're going to have wrinkles and wrinkle shapes that are going to be shaded a certain sort of way. I'll just draw some triangles. Let's say we're creating some triangular shadows on our clothing. Now, if we do one or the other, we're going to fall short. So in other words, we need both the meta shading of the form underneath as well as the detail shading in order for things to feel complete. So it's easy to draw something like a jacket here and just really focus on that detail shading. But if we don't keep in mind that cylindrical nature of the jacket, let's say that the jacket's like this, let's say that the light's coming from like over here. If we don't actually take this dark color and just block out the entire right portion of the jacket to show the form of the jacket, then we miss out on a lot of three-dimensionality. So we have to do both the detail shading and the form shading. Both, right? We can't just do one or the other. Okay. I'll go ahead and scroll through here, see if anybody else has any cloak submissions. Rain has created a full painting. How are we supposed to keep up with this? I do not know. Okay, awesome. Cloak, the contour there looks just how I'd want to see it. These forms all look good. This form here should fall behind. This is a stupid tiny nitpick, so I'm so sorry about this. Should technically fall in front of that other form, so sorry to even bring it up, but could do that. And here we want to think about the shading as well. So remember here that when you're shading these folds, these are all cylindrical forms. So the shading should move along the body of the cylinder. Or some of them are like cones, but you know, same thing. Listen, guys, think about it like this. So you shade a box like so. And the shadow moves with the box. It moves up and down the surface of the box. A cylinder is just a box with a billion sides. So if you're shading a cylinder, the shadows and the highlights are still just going to move up and down that form. So when you go to shade a form like this, if we point a light at it, the light should move up and down the form, and then the shadows should move up and down the form. And this is actually mostly the case on this drawing, so it's mostly good. I do notice some kind of weird areas over here where I'm not quite sure how the form is being portrayed in this area. We could bring some shadows in over here in order to show this form also. So just think about that as you're shading your cylinders. Love drawing the folds. They're really fun, aren't they? Okay. Let's see. Did all right. Don't look at the anatomy. Okay. My eyes are covered. Let's see. I have to flip everything because my canvas, I've rotated my canvas. Terrible. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Very good. Make sure here. I always recommend. You probably know what's going on. So I'm just going to say something here. This is kind of a minor point, kind of a nitpick again. You probably know what's going on in this area, but we don't necessarily. So it's good with areas like this to not leave things to be ambiguous. So this might be shorthand for something that you don't understand. But for me, I have to kind of look at it and figure out what's going on. So it might be good with these just for the sake of practice to just go ahead and make sure that we draw all the way through and we create something that reads super clearly. And it also forces you to challenge yourself because sometimes we do things like that out of a lack of understanding, not intentionally. It's not like we intentionally try and avoid drawing the form. It'll just sort of happen naturally. I do that a lot when painting. I'll draw, you know, this value and this value and then this value over here. And I'll push it this way, and eventually I'll be like, I don't really know what kind of shape I'm trying to create. Let me just kind of blend it out. And I have to stop myself from doing that because, like, wait a minute, no, try and, like, understand what that form is. And so sometimes it happens without you consciously, like, making the decision. I'm not saying that's what did happen here, but that's just another possible upside. Other than that, I would just take these two sides and make sure it looks like they wrap around the back of the form. So take this line here, extend it back behind like so, and this one here, bring it back around like that. And then I think that completes completes the cape right there. So something like that. But yeah, that's looking good. Awesome. And then, yeah, I don't know if that's Maya or Maya. Either way, looks great. Really like the design there. Let's see, Micah, that is also looking very cool. CJ, so lost. I don't think so. That's a very unique kind of character design, though. Okay, actually, you might be a little bit lost. Okay, fine, whatever. See, you're lost because you're using. Is that Ibis paint? Oh my gosh. I have a lot of students who use Ibis paint. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it, except that they make you like watch ads to access brushes or something. And I guess to be fair, that's nicer than like forcing you to pay for the app, maybe. But I just know I've always found Procreate to be very intuitive. I like Procreate. I'm just a little bit biased, but you can create cool stuff with Ibis. So, okay, this looks good, but look at this. Our fold or our lines move up and the wave also moves up. This creates a confusing circumstance where we don't get the overlap that we're looking for. So remember, push this overlap through and against the movement of those folds, and then we can create that 3D form very easily with two corresponding lines showing layering cloth. And then we could go through and apply that to all these other areas. I'll give you one more example here. So in here, down through and around. And what we're imagining happening there is a fold like this. Right? And even just those two folds would probably be enough to sell this cape. Maybe you could add one more right here or something. And that would be banging. Here, I'll go ahead and paste that. Yeah, Procreate's pretty awesome. I just don't really like iPads, to be honest. But iPads are very accessible, and Procreate's very cheap. So I couldn't really recommend anything else to anybody. You know, I use Photoshop with a Wacom because I can, I guess, and I draw all day. But iPad is, yeah, definitely the most accessible. It's the best bang for your buck by far. Okay. No one said cheap. You could use, actually, I'm sorry. Best bang for your buck is a screenless Huion with Krita on the laptop you already own, to be fair. But if you want a screen, yeah, Procreate's pretty nice. Let's see. Yeah, they moved Clip Studio. Is Clip Studio subscription only now? That's terrible, because that was like the good thing about Clip Studio is you could buy it. Okay, only on iPads. Okay. Okay, did Josh cook? Did Josh cook? Let's check this out. Yes. This is tasty, I dare say. Yummy in my tummy. Okay, let's go ahead here. I just want to, on this side, notice how this fold moves towards the line. Again, not in an accuracy, but it'll look more 3D if we pull this past and around and then create that form there. So you can make that even more explicit if you want to. And in some ways, this will be less visually confusing as well. If you've heard of the idea of tangents, of things that touch that aren't actually touching. So if two people are, this will kind of look like two people are touching, but maybe actually you mean for them to be, spaced out from each other. The tangent would be kind of visually unclear. So there are situations like this where sometimes you want to look at things from a different angle, not because it's unrealistic or wrong, but it just doesn't read as well. But yes, that is looking good. Okay. Don't know if you did this right. Well, I know if you did it right. Hate to brag. Let's see. Looks pretty good. I'm seeing that sometimes the two halves of the cape are a little bit disconnected, which happens. So we just want this line to trace around and behind, and then this line, instead of bowing in, should not move within the bounds of the leg there. So this form would actually, or this shape would actually exist like this. And maybe this edge would go all the way out there as well. So it actually exists like this. It would go around the body and then be continued out here like that. And then otherwise, yeah, looking great. So just make sure that the two halves look like they wrap around and connect to one another. Awesome. Yeah, Procreate's very affordable. Yeah. Photoshop with a Wacom will certainly get the job done. It just costs a small fortune every year. Okay. Yep. You go. Yep. Sounds good, Josh. Okay. F ... That's looking good. Again, I wish it showed me your name, but it doesn't. Oh well. Okay. Well, I think that we've all done a lot of cape practice at this point. If you would like to continue to work on this, feel free to take a screenshot. But I'm going to try and we'll try and work a little bit on compression folds here. We've already spent an hour and 20, so I don't know how far we'll get, but we can at least begin to warm up on some of the... Actually, you know what? Let me just ask you guys. Would you rather continue practicing these sorts of capes? I could pull up another reference and we could do like these sorts of capes or skirts. Would you rather go straight to just reviewing art for fun? You know, what are you guys feeling? Because we could move on to compression folds, but those are kind of a beast in and of themselves, and we've already kind of spent a lot of time and focus here. So you know, yeah, maybe we'll save. Set up a poll. How do I set up a poll? I need people who know how to do this. Let's see, who knows how to set things up. Okay, do you have permissions to do it? I don't know if you need certain permissions or something, but if you can do it, just go ahead and do it. Came here for compression folds. Okay, let's go over the basic form for compression folds at least. Like let's at least do that, because I think that even just knowing that form is probably going to help you a lot. And then we'll just see where we end up time-wise. Time-wise, and I'll let Alice set up that poll. So the basic form that we're dealing with there is the same sort of ribbon as before, but it bows out to both sides. So we'll start with at least this basic form, and then based on the poll, I'll either switch to review or we can draw one from reference. So it's like this. Okay, let's draw a line that's going to snake just like before. I'm gesturing to my camera, but if you're on Discord, you can't see it. So it's going to snake just like before, and this time it's a tube, and that's for good reason. Okay. Now, what we did previously was we took this line and we extended it, and that's good. Let's draw a triangle like this. So what we're going to be doing is extending this tube in two directions. And this is the best place to start with compression folds. I've tried to work with students on these a lot, and this is by far the best method that I've found. It makes the most sense for me as well. So we start with this tube, and you'll see this. When you look at compression folds, you'll see these snaking tubes. And you can draw this triangle, and what we're doing is we're extending it in two directions. So we extend it down like this off of these edges, and down like this off of these edges. So I'll move around like so, and we're going to connect these where these surfaces would be visible. Here, this one won't be visible until it emerges from back here, and then we get this. You could think about this a little bit like a hilltop. It's like a hilltop with a little path snaking along the top, right? Where is this in? I'm not sure I understand that question exactly. Transparent fabrics, you draw them the same way you would draw any fabric. While everybody else is working on this form, I'll just draw a quick example. So, like, let's say this is your fabric. The difference is you would actually draw the full line. So rather than leaving some of the, rather than going back and erasing, you wouldn't necessarily do that. Although you could partially erase. But it's essentially the same thing. Then the question is going to be, how do you layer? So, and that's going to depend on if you're drawing against a light or dark background. For instance, if you're drawing against a dark background, I think the way that you would do this, like if it was a light fabric against a dark background, the more layers of fabric you were seeing, the lighter it would be. So you could start with a basic pass here. And out here on the edges, there's only one layer of fabric. That's not a very even tone at all here. Let me just turn that off. So I'll start with something like this. So, okay. Out on the edges, that's only one layer. Right here, we're going to have two layers. So I'll stack that up. And the same would be true, I think, right here. That would be two layers. And then we'd get three layers through here. You could do that in reverse if you were drawing against a different sort of background. Wait, I did that the wrong way, actually. So this needs to be the brightest. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So yeah, same sort of fold, except you draw both lines and then you stack your colors based on the type of fabric or the, you know, or the background. And I would use a lot of reference for that because that'll probably change a lot depending on the environment. That is a nice little snake. You guys are picking up on this form super quick. That's good to see. I'm seeing some of these come in. You guys are doing a good job here. Damien, you say that it wasn't so bad. I hate to crush your dreams here. But okay, great job there, Rain. Okay, looking good. I hate to crush your dreams. This is pretty good, but it is missing something kind of important. So what you have is actually a decent 3D form. So this is a decent 3D form, but it doesn't have the triangular look that we're going for. And the reason for that, this looks more like just a straight sort of wall. We need these lines to push out to the side. So for instance, this line should push out and be diagonal like this. This one over here should be diagonal the other direction, like that. And then I think that you will not find it to be so bad for sure. Yeah, I don't think this one will be so bad at all. It seems that this one does seem to be the easier of the two, which is neat to see. Because I don't know if I would have expected that, but awesome. Okay, Art Reviews is the winner. Shocking. Okay, wolf cut, blue, light pink, dark pink. Let's see. That'll make 0 cents for anybody watching on YouTube. Let's see. What am I doing here? I was gonna look up. Okay. I gotta find a reference real quick for a compression fold. Who's that actress from Wednesday? The one who was not the main. Okay, I think I already found. Okay, Emma Myers. That's right. I always go to these references because they're pretty. Let's see. They're pretty good for folds. So let's see what I can find. I don't know. What did I say? Oh, yeah, sorry. Wolf cut, light blue, dark blue, light pink, dark pink, and maybe like a cyan blue. Okay, so I don't know if I like this one. Just give me a moment, guys. I gotta make sure the reference I choose here is solid for these folds, you know. Okay. Okay. There do seem to be some compression folds there. Okay, so just to clarify here. So here's an example of some folds that are definitely being caused by compression. So what that would mean is, you know, the arm bends, compressing the fabric in here and creating a fold. You can see this on the other side as well. Now, the way that I recommend handling this is I'll start with, again, sort of the meta form or the big form that we're dealing with underneath. In this case, it's a sort of tube. I'll brush over this, make sure I create, kind of fade that back. And then I like to break it up a little bit in terms of proportion. There are kind of two elements to this process. And at the end of the day, your first pass or two might not look perfect because you have to balance design with form and construction. But we'll focus mostly on form here. So I like to look right in the armpit, and I like to find the loop-de-doo area. Usually there's at least one in the armpit somewhere, like this. And I like to find that. Then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build that snake from before. So right in here towards the arm, we can see kind of on the edge, we get the snake that runs through. It kind of gets 1, 2. It's kind of like, yeah, it forms a sort of Z. So we kind of go through, we get this sort of Z. And then we get another couple of tubes running around the arm like so. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just going through and I'm finding those same sorts of building blocks, but in this circumstance instead, trying to work a little bit on silhouette as I do so. But you'll notice the silhouette on the outside is exceptionally simple, not complicated. And once we have this blocked in, the compression folds, you can see where they become pretty easy. Again, really focus though, you don't get lines where there's no overlap. So it would be tempting to look at a shadow like this right here. Let me make sure this is showing on YouTube. It's not. Awesome, there we go. So it'd be tempting to look at a shadow here and try and draw that in, but there's no line there. There's no overlap occurring. So you don't really need that, actually. And so when you're drawing these with lines, I mean, the line work's going to be pretty simple. What I'll do here is I'll just extend this in either direction, and you'll see that these forms start to really jump out at you pretty easily. Try and make sure that I'm really limiting myself to only showing lines where there are edges or where there are overlaps. And then I'll erase lines where there aren't. And the finished result in terms of line work can actually be pretty simple. Pretty simple. And then from here, I recommend not adding anything else, basically unless you're going to paint. You could get into some cell shading or something, but beyond this, I wouldn't do too much more. Again, unless you're going to paint. And the process for doing that, I'm happy to go over that. We haven't set any of that up though. We haven't done any of the setup for that. So I would say let's practice kind of drawing these folds and look at how they turn out. But I don't know if we'll go through the full process of painting them because that sounds like a lot of legwork. Yeah, so cell shading would be, so to paint something, let's say that you were going to draw a cylinder here or an arm. If I was going to paint it, you might use things like midtones. So you might draw a dark area, draw a core shadow, and then blend it out, right? You would add midtones, fade it out. That would be a more painterly approach. Maybe smudge it. Cell shading is what you see in cartoons, where you use a simple block of tone like this. And so that can also be useful in situations like this. You could try and add some very simple shading for the sake of composition. I don't mind that. Might be a good way to go to add some extra clarity. Still fine and I don't know why. Is that a generational song yet? There we go. Thank you, Josh. And there are some folds that I wouldn't even add except in shading. So you'll notice this fold right here that I've just added towards the shoulder. This one here, I don't use a line for that at all because it's so subtle. Yes, thank you to whoever put the reference in chat. I should have been doing that the whole time. Okay. Batman and Blobfish, it looks like you have a little bit of fundamentals to train, is what it looks like. But that's okay. We were all there at one point. We were all there at one point. Whoa, that's huge. Okay, feels off, you say. Off. Preposterous. Okay. Let's see. So we have this little back and forth, looking good. Like I say, so you can focus on the proportion. You can focus on the construction. We're focused a little bit more on construction. But here we could try and bring some more of the proportion and design back into the piece. So try and nail some of these negative shapes, like kind of right in here. I think your form is pretty good, but we could try and find this little negative shape here and then actually widen out this arm a little bit because it shouldn't be that much thinner, if thinner at all, than the other arm. Notice how this back section of the arm is actually pretty simple. So you get the elbow, you get kind of one fold, and then, oh, I guess you did kind of do that, but they're proportioned a little bit differently. So then we get this one sweeping fold, and then that shoulder pad over there, and that kind of sticks up. See how that helps the shape design? And so really so much of this is design. This swoops out and around and down. This proportioning here isn't totally accurate, but I don't really mind it. So take this down here. I think this area things get a little bit weird because it's not actually clear that we have an overlap right here. Let me try and trace what's going on. Oh, I see what we're trying to do. So this needs to come up a little bit higher if that's going to be an overlap, and then this needs to come back behind rather than trace into the top. Because remember, that line means that something has to go in front of something else. And then we could end up somewhere around here. So I haven't actually dramatically altered the form all that much, but sometimes just finding some of those shapes. And then, like I say, I did correct the form a little bit lower down, kind of around this area down here. That'll also help out. And then sometimes it's all just a matter of a little bit of extra shape design. Hey, you're saying you're lost, but I don't know. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty cool. Pretty neat. You know, you've been a soldier. Like, we can say this for sure. You've been trying harder than hard. Fighting every battle to its fullest. Yeah, I mean, this looks kind of cool. It definitely is, like, basically, I think you'll need to study those forms from before, because if I remember correctly, you didn't quite nail that, form originally. So, with that being said, I would just go back and practice more of those folds. I hate to say that, more of those kind of snaking triangular tubes. I know that's kind of a boring answer, is like, you know, go practice this or that basic form, but sometimes that is what's necessary. I think I lost it. Where is it? Here it is, this guy here. So sometimes that's just kind of the boring answer is, you know, if that form just isn't showing up, then it might be that it just needs a little bit more practice. Yeah, this is going to be on YouTube. I'll leave it up on YouTube. That sounds like a good idea. And then I'll go ahead and, like I say, I'm going to chop it up into smaller pieces and post it to Patreon as well. I don't have the full Patreon course finished yet, but this is just a part of working on that. And maybe this will be a good way to get some of those recordings done in a way that's a little bit more fun. Okay. Fiery Dusk sent this one. Cool. Cool. Okay, you did work on that, and I do see that. I do appreciate that. It's looking pretty cool. And so what we would want is we would want that to be applied to this drawing here. So we'd want to see the same form, and you could even just ignore the reference if you wanted to, just to get a feel for this. You could just ignore the reference and just try snaking one of those forms through this arm and just see what that would feel like. See what it would feel like to draw that little triangle, blend it into the cuff of the sleeve, and see what it's like to take this form and see if you can kind of blend it into the geometry of that arm there. It's probably not going to have the prettiest design if you're doing it from your head. Might not be as good. Eventually you'll be doing them from reference and they'll look a little bit better. But this might be a good place to start just to get a feel for exactly what we're doing. Because what we're doing is we're taking those forms and we're working on getting used to placing those on the arm. And really, probably the hardest thing is actually you need fewer lines than you suspect most of the time. That's actually kind of what's a little bit tricky about it. But you could try practicing that, because that's what we're doing, is we're trying to see those same forms in this here. There was another thing that I saw in chat I'm going to go to. Just got off from Popeyes, serving the people. Hell yeah. No, I think you did the transparent very well. That looks good. That looks like folds of transparent cloth. You know, like, I'm not saying there isn't room for improvement, but that looks like folds of transparent cloth. So that looks good. Easier to block in shadows. That is perfectly acceptable, I think. Personally, I kind of agree. I think that compression folds become much easier once you think in terms of painting. So, totally fair. Totally fair. It's good to be able to draw them too, though, because it's easy to miss certain structures sometimes when you can't draw them. Like, I can see there are a couple of shapes here that I think this particular transition right in this area gets a little bit lost. I would probably continue to refine that a little bit, but overall, yeah, this is looking like a nice bit of shape design here. I would just really focus on simplifying this line along the back, because look at how simple that is in the reference. It's almost just one curve. Whoa, terrifying, Demalius. Oh, yes, and Miss F there. One sec. Okay. Shrink this down. And I said I'd go till 4, so I think for the next 20 minutes, I'll just grab images from chat and just look at them. So feel free to just send drawings. We'll just have fun. Okay, so this here, kind of looking at the original, we have that little curve there. We have some of these down here. And there are some things that you're doing well. Like, we have a good general impression of compression folding. But yes, so some of the shadows don't quite make sense. And this is where, like I'm saying, painting is a really useful way to make sense of these shadows, but we haven't done some of the prior legwork. So again, when it comes to things like, or maybe this is meant to be scuffing or something on the jacket, but you know, cylinders are shaded in a way that's pretty simple. So they're going to be kind of light, and then they're going to be kind of dark, you know, and then we just put additional shadows on top of that. But you kind of want to be very intentional with where you're going to use your shading, because each shadow that you add is going to say something important, and so make sure that you're being intentional with that. With this shadow up here, we do get a sort of large triangular shadow like this, but then notice how there's another triangle that kind of cuts into it like that to create that fold. So that's an important little detail right there. I'm going to take a light value and come through this little ridge right here, and I'm going to make sure that this one overlaps this one back here. So let that come in front. And then that looks pretty cool. I would maybe not use that particular shadow right there. Maybe that pushes things into being a little bit too busy. Or oh, maybe I'd get rid of this one. I got to think about what I want to do here for this particular area. I'm not even trying to match it to the reference at this point, just trying to find something that looks nice shape design wise. And I think that makes a reasonable amount of sense. Keep in mind though, what we have here is we have sort of hollow bowls. So think about it like this. This little area right down here on the reference is sort of like a little hollow bowl. So here's a bowl. It's hollow, as we've just said. If a light's coming from this side, the shadow's going to be actually nearer to the light. It's the opposite of a ball. So if a ball is shaded like this, the bowl is going to be shaded the other way around. So this shadow should cling to the back of this form over here like that, and it should get light as it approaches this side over here. And then I like that you do have shading along the far side of this form there in some areas to help sell that form. We just want to make sure that the shading on the left doesn't compete with that and get in the way of the overall form. So actually I think this would be a good one to just work on some simplification with. Simplification and shape design. Listen, here's the secret. If your drawing is made out of very cool shapes, people don't really care how accurate it is. You know, that's the good news. So you can see there, I didn't really change this form at all, but if I just add a more distinct silhouette, so watch that, and then there you go. Same form, different silhouette. It's more interesting to look at. So there's my recommendation there. I'll put this in chat there. Okay, Tiffany sent a lady with butterfly wings. That's pretty dope. Make sure to add comments if you want to. I'll just look at it. There's no specific request made with this one necessarily, but it looks pretty cool. One thing that I like about this is it's cool in regards especially to how it's analogous to the drawing over here, so you can see some of those folds there on the skirt. It's kind of cool that there are folds here, here as well. Could be something to play around with, is try and incorporate some of those more triangular folds. This one here, so when the folds simply go back and forth like this, it almost looks like the skirt is being kind of scrunched up and down. And that's what's happening here as well. But you'll notice that it happens in relation to where the leg is. So if there's a certain leg that is pushing against the skirt, that causes the bunching. But then if it's smoothed out elsewhere, that gives the impression that rather than the skirt just being bunched or not fitting, it's just kind of being pushed by the leg. And so that's something that you could think about, is adding those sort of back and forth wrinkles to the skirt, maybe on one side, give it a certain kind of flow. Let's see, it seems to kind of, yeah, kind of create a little pinched up area around here. And it swings up towards that other hip, so it could be that creating a sort of simplified impression would be useful in a situation like that, unless the previous effect was intended. But No, this looks really cool. And this is a good opportunity as well for more form shading, because like I say, you know, you want to really think about the meta form. All of the individual forms here are shaded really well, but you'll notice that in some, or all of the details rather, but you'll notice that in some areas, the actual form shading doesn't always come through. So like on the legs here, we don't necessarily see the full form of the leg, whereas like a simple kind of bit of light through the leg, and then maybe just a little bit of shadow on either side. You can see how that can really help that leg there on the left look more three-dimensional than the one on the right. They're virtually the same. You just take the overall form and you apply the overall form shading. Same could be done here with the skirt as well. So whatever detail we add to the skirt, if you let it get, you know, darker on the sides, brighter through the middle with even just a little bit more contrast, we can bring that same sense of three-dimensionality in there. You did this with the corset here pretty well though, actually. That looks good. So could be something you could consider with some of the other forms also. Yeah, very cool. I'll check chat real quick and see if there were any other comments that were associated, but unfortunately I might not be able to find them, so oh well. Okay, let's see. I don't want to skip anything. I feel like the pants are off on this one. I might not be able to get to everybody's, by the way. I'm sorry about that. We're just gonna look through these for a bit. I'll try and be kind of quick. This is cool. So these are like compression folds as well. And here, give me just whoops. Give me just one moment. I'm gonna go back to the stream chat here. Okay. So yeah, these are like a form of compression fold as well. My recommendation with clothing like this is always going to be asymmetry. You'll see this a lot in references as well. Is let's say that we have the leg moving through here. It's doing its thing. We can shift back and forth of that leg, creating rhythm through the legs. You can think about it, creating a sort of rhythm through the leg, if you imagine that sort of S curve there, like that. And so what we can look for here is rather than just kind of moving about the leg on either side with bumpy forms, we could kind of shift as we go and create something that has some nice movement to it. Maybe I want this one to kind of shift out like this. Let me think about this one for a moment though. Offset curves is the way that you want to think about this. So this is going to be less, it's going to have less design appeal than this is the way that you want to think about it. So you want your curves to be asymmetrical, different than each other. So let me think about this one for a moment. I think there are kind of two sections to the leg. So I got to think about how I would want those two to work together. That looks kind of cool. And you can make these sharper if you wanted to also. And so you can see here how I've offset these two curves. This one is a concave and then convex. And so with those offset lines, you can create a little bit more design appeal in the clothing rather than kind of just moving with the leg through the center. You can move back and forth against the leg, offsetting your curves. And that can help to create more dynamic pants. Similar thing to what you're doing in the arm. You've really good shape design in your arms and in your body. So I think you know this stuff. It's just a matter of putting it into the legs as well. Okay. Here's this. This looks cool and nice. This is a giant flurry of detail. I don't know that I can give a ton of feedback on it yet because it's just so much. It's such a work in progress. But one thing that I can say is you're going to want to be careful here of the gesture of the skirt for sure. So as you go, make sure that you keep in mind where this skirt actually originates around her waist and make sure that you know what the gesture of these different pieces of fold are going to be, these pieces of cloth. Because if you draw them all as just kind of straight lines, what you may find is that when you go to connect them, they may look a little bit stiff or a little bit awkward. So I may gesture those out fully before you go to detail them, and it may save you some pain in the future there. Okay. Let's see. This is a cool character design. It's another one that's hard for me to like give feedback on without knowing more about the character, and I wish that I had time to, what do you want to say, like chat with y'all about it, but I might not have time to do that. Maybe in the future what I'll do is I'll save some more time for review, and then I'll unmute you guys and you can explain yourselves, but I don't have time for that today. So yeah, this looks really nice. Oh, look at those folds around the bottom. Okay, awesome. Hey, you know what? Since we're on the topic of folds, this leg's kind of coming towards us. So again, metaform here. That ellipse would track like this. That ellipse on the bottom would look like that. So we could take this, we could go around like this, and we could do the same thing around the back. What do we think about that? This is not only possible, but may add some nice depth. Yeah, especially over here. I get the feeling we would get a little bit of this. I get the feeling we could add some three-dimensionality to those legs. Yeah, awesome. I should have reminded you guys to leave comments with your drawings earlier, but oh well. I'll keep looking. I don't know what this thing is in his arms. Is this a Pokemon? I'm not scrolled all the way down in chat, so I can't actually see you guys responding. One sec. Give me just a moment. Okay. So here is this. I'm going to jump to present for a moment here. Yeah, they don't have slow modes. That would be... Let's see. Can we scroll back up to where this was? Oh, geez. There have been so many. Okay, I think it was something like maybe the proportions were off, something like that. Let me think of if that makes sense. It could. Well, there are actually a couple things going on here. So it could be proportions, but consider this, if you will. Here's a head, and a head is sort of an interesting thing. Marvel of nature. It's going to go down like this. And given that it's in the world, which as far as we know has at least 3 dimensions, we're going to want to consider it 3-dimensionally. So looking at the angle of his face here and the turn of his nose and his mouth, we kind of get this impression that he's looking down towards the thing that he's holding. And so in this circumstance here, what that's going to create is if we think about this in the context of a box that turns down, we get this angle like this, and we can use this for the ear. So we can use that same angle, come back up here, and place that ear actually higher up, and this will increase the 3-dimensional feel of the head. This will actually help the head to feel more 3D, like that. And then the other main consideration that I would have with this one, again, before even worrying about proportion, so to speak, on a large scale, like let's just think about construction for a moment, is this arm points a ways away. We get this impression of an elbow back here, but I don't think an elbow here proportionally would make sense because we'd end up with a very weird sort of arm, and then the arm just kind of points off into no man's land. So make sure that this arm here points back towards an elbow, and then it works its way back up to the shoulder. This arm over here looks really nice. I really like the way that you did that foreshortening. Okay. Let's see. What else do I have? I'll grab this one real quick. This is a very pretty painting. Meant to be folds on her shirt. I don't think she's wearing a shirt. What? Okay. Well, this is a cool piece. This is another fun one if we consider the head in terms of 3-dimensionality. if you wanted to work on this. I know you're probably deep into the painting on this one. You're like, more sketching, no, but you know, here's a thought. So head again. This line right here, the hair is actually going to wrap around the head, so the head is a round form. So take this line, it's actually going to wrap like this. And we create one of those. And then if we look at the face right here, this actually looks pretty good. But this far eye is actually a little bit wider than the near one, and I don't know if that's convincing. So I think I would take this eye here. I would shift its weight forwards a little bit for the perspective, and then just make sure that it's not being bullied by this hair. This hair almost looks like it's pushing the eye in and kind of compressing it. So make sure it's not bullied by that hair. Make sure it looks like it's, you know, at least as big as this other eye over here. Maybe we could even bring that one in just a little bit so the two seem like they work in perspective. And then when we find the edge of that face, and we also know where the back of the head is, this is kind of important. Oh no, I did that all in the same layer. Oh well. This is kind of important because the ear is going to go halfway between the edge of the face and the back of the head, but it's actually going to be further than that because of perspective. So considering perspective, the ear might go, this is a pretty nitpicky sort of difference, but I might just push that hair forwards in front just a little bit because the hair almost kind of implies that the ear is a little bit farther forward. I just push that hair forward a little bit. I don't think you need to like restructure the ear or anything just to create that distance. And then the last thing I would do, this will add a ton of depth to the face, is we draw this center line here for the eyes, but our forehead pushes outwards in front of our eyes. So we actually want these eyebrows to sit over here and not to be centered on the same plane as our eyes. And that'll give the face a lot of depth. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense. So curve, out, back. Okay. This one's fold related. I like fold related drawings. And also this has really nice colors and detailing. So, hey, awesome. The folds here look pretty good. They're not positioned in a way that is convenient for you to create the sorts of folds that we were talking about earlier, is why you might not like them. Also, the arm is kind of a little bit wonk, but that's okay. So the folds here, the cloth moves like this, and the folds also do, and that's why we don't get that same sort of three-dimensionality that you might be going for. If we bring the cloth around like this, then we get that sense of three-dimensionality that you're looking for. So that's what we could do down there. Otherwise, that looks okay. I mean, that looks like an okay skirt. I mentioned that the shirt here is a little bit weird. So I think this part of the arm should be coming at us just slightly, and then the hand should be going back. So what I'd want to see is I'd want to actually see the opening of this sleeve, and I think that'll look nice. One might say, even if I was to venture a guess, something like that. So that's where I would start with that. Otherwise, awesome composition here, sick style. Yeah, that's what's up. Who was that? Micah? Yeah, dope. Okay, excellent cape there, Josh. Looks like you got that dialed in. Let's see. Fiery Dusk, that is a very cool illustration. I'm trying to think if there's anything in particular that I want to like touch on there. And this is kind of small, but just so that I don't sell you short here and not pull your image up. And it's a good image that there's not a ton that I would want to go over, right? That means it's a good piece. Oh, don't tell me that. My computer's talking back to me. One sec. I'm gonna have to get kind of nasty here. Okay. So rotate. So this sort of finger here these fingers are coming at us. And fingers, when they come at us, are kind of fun. Think about it like a box. So here's a box from on top. Here's a box when it's coming at us. You can show when a finger is coming at you by way of the fingernail. So here's the tip of a finger. We could be looking at this finger from the top if the fingernail is right here. We could be looking at it from the front if the fingernail is right here. So always be mindful of those fingernails. So if we have fingers that are coming at us like this, we have these sorts of tubes that are coming out and then forwards over the face. We can add a little bit more depth here if we kind of recognize where those fingernails are going to be. And then put some extra attention into showing those forms. Same here as well, by the way. This fingernail is oriented like this, but the palm is oriented like this, which doesn't make a ton of sense. So we could take this fingernail and actually just orient it like so, almost the exact same shape. Still let that dig into the face, that's just fine. And this orients the hand more accurately with the palm. So kind of a little miniature consideration right here. Most of these hands, though, are really solid. Like, this is a really solid hand. I can tell you're putting a ton of effort into this, so it's awesome. Kenton, please choose one of these. I'm not a big chooser. Not a big chooser. Let's see. Let me look at this. Is that Cleavage Lady from Dragon Slayer? Or is that a OC inspired by... You guys know the one I'm talking about. Come on. I mean, that's kind of fun. That's kind of a fun design. I think my recommendation would be, study your fundamentals, very hard, very definitely work on your fundamentals, and that'll be good. Especially that one there with the guy and it's nighttime. Definitely work on your faces. Things like, here, let me just rotate this over here. You know what? If I was to give you an assignment, just study 3/4 faces. Just do it. It'll be useful. Start with boxes. Move your way into 3/4 faces. 3/4 faces are like boxes. So you draw your sort of box here. You're going to have the edge of the face, the side of the face. Here's the front. The far eye should be smaller. Near eye should be larger. You can see how that fits on the front of our box, so to speak. Come back here. There's the ear. And look at that. We push that right into perspective. It looks good. So I can't, teach you all the throws of drawing right now, but I could give you an assignment. And your assignment would be study your 3D forms, all the basic forms that we kind of talked about working on folds, and study your faces. That's going to be good. Okay, how do you fix this? Well, I think probably step one is, for those of you who submit drawings for TikTok, by the way, this is a big tip, is just make sure that you finish the drawing, because it's always a little bit tough to, I can critique sketches to some extent when they're unfinished, and that's fine. But it's a little bit easier to critique drawings once they've been finished, because I might be critiquing something that you're going to change anyway, or that's just a sketch mark or something else. So it's always better when the drawing is fairly finished. But even at a sketchy stage, there are always things that I notice. I just mentioned how the head is a box, so let's consider the box nature of the head from this sort of angle here. Very nice. Here's the back of the head, or the back of our box, and the ear should attach further than halfway back, so we want to go further than halfway back. And the ear should be all the way over here. So make sure that we don't miss out on that space that should exist between the ear and the face. Or else the head will lack depth, right? Because we're missing that side plane. So there's one that you can add right there. Just a quick, simple spot that would be convenient to go ahead and throw in. Okay. Shading. I'm gonna have to go here in just like a minute or two, guys, because my voice is getting pretty hoarse. There's your jump scare. Rotate it this way. This is very nice. I really like this color scheme. I really like your color variation. I like this rim lighting back here. I like a lot of this stuff. What am I supposed to say is wrong with this? Somebody tell me what I'm supposed to dislike. Okay, so technically the eyes, if we measure this angle here. The mouth isn't totally straight. That's okay. Nor is the chin. I think the eye, even less so, though. Oh, yes, and it goes way up. Wait, sorry, that was wrong. There we go. Yeah, so I think the eye falls even just a little bit above. And then... But then both of the eyes are kind of oriented as if they're straight. So I think this is what needs to happen for this face. I think it's more of a sketch thing. I really like the style, really like the shading style, everything like that. I think if the mouth is going to kind of lean like this, you know, make sure that all of your features are oriented in a way that seems appropriate. So the two eyes should be oriented in the same way. If you're going to have an eye like this, you know, I'll draw this line that moves this way, this line that moves this way, and then it looks like this eye kind of goes a little bit further down. So just make sure, yeah, I'll kind of start this a little bit higher up. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It even influenced me. I moved the lines too much. Okay, it looks like this. This is what we want. I started looking at the eye and it threw me off. Okay, here we go. So make sure that this eye here isn't rotated too far up and to the left. And then it follows a similar gesture as that first eye. Then with eyebrows, I like to start with a unibrow a lot of the time. So start with something like this. And you can break it up just for the sake of gesture. That's a really nice way to make sure that they feel like they're well incorporated into the face. And so I think that you would find that something like this would be a little bit more symmetrical, and then just don't lose that shading style because that looks pretty cool. Oh, and I probably need to move this so it looks a different direction. Was that something you did or something I did? I don't remember. I don't have the original anymore. Oh well, something like this. About. Okay. Yeah, a little bit more symmetry there. Should be worthwhile. Okay, I'll pick one more. Let's see. Oh, this is a great one. This is a great one. I'm gonna jump to present as well and just look at what's going on here. Ah, so many good ones. Okay, but this will have to be the last one. This will have to be the last one. This is a good one though, because look at this eye over here. Look at this eye over here. It's totally wrong, but that's so engaging. It's so engaging when there's something that is just like addressable. You know, and you're like, oh, hey, we can look at that. Okay. Awesome. So here's this line. Here's the chin. Here's the nose. Now, our eye socket, here, let me find the angle of the mouth there as kind of a reference. Okay, looks pretty good on the bottom. I think, yet again, we'll find that it just skews a little bit off base as it moves up and away. So find a line for the top of the eye like that. That'll be helpful. Now, the eye socket's going to do one of these numbers. It's going to kind of come down, around and out, and then over, and probably behind that nasal cavity, something like that. And so we need to actually bring this eye in farther. So here's the center line. Here's where that eye begins. It should probably start something like over here if it's not behind the nose. You could start something like right here. And then that ball is going to sit right in here, and those eyelids are going to wrap around that ball to form the eye right in here. And just make sure that that eye is tilted at the same-ish angle as the original. Like that. Okay, awesome. And that would be the best place to start. Then just bring the eyebrows into the same sense of perspective. So here we're going to have this forehead. Push that forehead out. Get those eyebrows aligned with a line through. And then bring them out and over. Like so. All right. And let me scroll down. Someone tagged me. What did I get tagged about? Oh, no problem. Okie dokie. Yep. Hopefully, listen, guys, there'll be a next time. This was fun, but my voice is very hoarse, so I'm gonna have to go. Do I swear that I'll see your art? Well, where is it? Where is it? Well, I did see. I have seen the versions that you've been sending, if that's what you mean, the like versions of the cape. But I don't know. Maybe you can ping me later. I don't know. I don't know what the ping permissions are. But anywho, there we go. We'll see. Maybe we'll get some. Hey, yeah. Maybe proportions. You know. Oh well, yeah. My voice will feel better later today. It's just you talk for 2.5 hours straight, kind of wears you out a little bit. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'll come up with some more kind of fun ideas for activities we can do and whatnot. Maybe I can make things even more interactive. We'll see. But yeah, all right, cool. Well, peace, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and stop the YouTube stream and then leave the Discord. So